My bike doesn't come with a sump guard as standard, and because the engine's a stressed member of the frame, there's absolutely nothing protecting the sump. Some time ago I made a guard out of some aluminium checker plate. It really wasn't heavy enough, but it's what I had at the time, and I also didn't have a decent welder at the time. So I'm going to take it off and build a new one. While the old guard doesn't look all that marvellous, I like the way that I've done it because it is unobtrusive. It's not like the big guards that you buy. It just protects the sump. And I found that that's all I need for the sort of riding I do. It may not look very pretty, but at least I'll be able to use it as a template to make a new one. So all the hard work is done. And most of the hard work involved was making the brackets to hang it off. As you can see, I've built it so that the original cowling still fits in place. I've made brackets out of 5mm thick steel that bolt to the original bottoms of the frame. And so there are 2 points at the front that hold the guard. And it's a similar arrangement at the back. I've used the existing holes in the existing frame to mount a piece of 5mm steel that goes across the bottom so that I can fit the back of the plate as well. And on the right hand side I've used an existing mounting point to mount the other side of the bracket. And the same with the right hand side of the front bracket. I've mounted it to existing points on the existing frame. This has proved to be nice and strong, and the old plate has taken a beating when I've been off-road. There's not a lot of ground clearance on the NC, and it's very easy to bottom out the sump on a bit of a dip or a hollow when you're riding on a gravel road. I guess it's obvious that with any engine guard, you've got to take the guard off to do your oil and filter change. But it's only 4 bolts, and I've got threads threaded into the frame brackets, so I don't have nuts to deal with. Only the one holding the spanner, of course. I think this checker plate was only about 1.6mm, and while checker plate is a bit stiffer than just the 1.6, it proved that it's just not quite up to the job. Quite apart from my doggy poo type welds with my old welder. So because I'm a computer expert and work with computers every day, I'm using a piece of paper and gluing pieces together so I've got a piece of paper big enough, and then just using the old guard as the template, and I'll draw around it. Highly technical. So there you go. Not exactly a CAD drawn picture, but I think it'll be good enough for my purposes. Now it's time to cut out my picture so that I can use it as a template to put onto the aluminium sheet that I'm going to use. I have some lovely clean, new 4mm thick aluminium plate. This stuff is surprisingly rigid, and it'll do the job nicely, and it'll be easy to weld. Alright, I've got the bottom bits all drawn out, so now it's time to cut them out on the bandsaw. This is one of the benefits of working with aluminium instead of steel. It's so much easier to cut out the bits that you're going to use for whatever you're fabricating. And as I've said before, this is just a hobby bandsaw with a hobby blade in it. And it cuts this 4mm sheet just beautifully. Next step is to get the angle right. So these two bits I'm going to weld together on the proper angle. So again, using a technical tool to measure the angle of the old one, I use this to get the angle right on the new piece. And now comes the most rewarding part of the exercise, sticking that sheet together. Now that I've got a new AC/DC TIG welder, I can stick this material together quite reasonably without making it look like a line of dog poo. I've only tacked it in place at this stage. This will allow me to bend the weld if I need to adjust the angle. So let's have a look. No, not that side. I should put it round the other way really. Actually, that looks pretty good. It's pretty close. Maybe we'll stick with that. Now I'm happy with that angle. I can run a bead right across that seam. And to make sure it's nice and strong, I put a bead along the other side as well. Well, that's done. Let's have a look at this bead. Doesn't look too bad. Who said welding aluminium was difficult? If a self-taught backyard bumbler can do it, I reckon anyone can learn how to do this stuff. But let's just go and check it again to see whether the angle really is correct. Ooh, that looks pretty good. I'll have that one. But I still really can't trust myself, so I need to check it against the bike to make sure it really is correct before I start putting all the other bits together. Surprisingly, it actually fits. Let's keep going then. The exhaust pipe is routed under the left-hand side of the engine, and this hangs down a little bit further than the rest of the engine. So I've got a little gusset on the right-hand side that takes a little bit of the space out on the right-hand side and also makes the whole thing a lot stiffer. And for those of you who are technically aware, yes, heating up aluminium does anneal it and makes it softer. But cooling it down rapidly again returns it to its nice rigid self. But anyway, the way this is constructed, there's a lot of rigidity in the structure. So here's what we've got so far. This 4mm aluminium really does weld quite easily. And here's the back view. Now going to fill in that little gap with a bit of scrap. Makes it even stronger. Now I can drill the holes through the plate that fit the plate to the mounting brackets. Now for another test fit. Is it going to fit into the holes in the brackets? Well, to be honest, I didn't get them quite right, so I had to file them out a little bit to get all 4 bolts to fit. Oh well. No one's perfect, I guess, me least of all. I'm wanting to put some sides on the guard that are a little bit taller than the original one, so again I use my technical process of a piece of paper, holding it in place, running my finger over the edge, and because my finger's dirty, I get a nice line on the paper. I've cut out the side bits in the usual way, and now I'm sticking it on. Now it's all welded up. But I can't leave the outside looking like that, even though some of the welds are fairly reasonable looking. I'm going to dress all the welds on the outside, using the flap disc on the grinder. Having ground the welds, I cleaned it up a little bit with some metal polish. Looks a bit nicer than the old one does. With everything looking hunky-dory and Bob's your uncle and all those other sayings, it's time to reassemble. Now that everything's fitted back together, let's have a look at the finished product. I like the fact that it maintains the original lines and the look of the bike, but it still protects the otherwise exposed sump from damage. I can hear you asking, why did you go to all that effort when you could have just bought one? Well, I like the nice, neat, unobtrusive lines of it. I've found that I don't really need anything more than a sump guard, and I love making things myself rather than paying for them. Much more satisfying.